Hey friends, we are here in, I think a snowflake just landed right on the lens, right in front of me. Hey friends, we are here in Acts chapter 11. This is an amazing chapter, and I will explain why. But at first glance, it might not seem very exciting, but it's actually quite wonderful. So what happens is Peter really just comes back from his time. He went to Joppa, and then he went to, what was it? Was it Caesarea? Anyways, he met a centurion named Cornelius, and it was a pretty amazing thing. You know, it showed that the Gentiles are able to be saved just like the Jews. This must have been a pretty wild idea for the Jews, because it would almost be like, let's say I'm just going to pick, a city, Flint, Michigan, not the best, city with the best reputation in the world. However, at one point, many people don't know this, Flint, Michigan was one of the richest cities in the entire world. And there was so much wealth coming out of Flint because of the lumber, and they were making carriages, and that's where General Motors started. So, not to talk too much about Flint, but let's say that there was a prophecy that one day there will be a mayor that comes to Flint, and that mayor will rightfully restore the inhabitants of Flint as the top of the world, and then this mayor actually comes, and then you hear about people in different countries that are like, that is my mayor. You're like, you don't live in Flint, Michigan. It would be something like that. Like, it would have been a little bit strange for them to be like, Jesus is our Messiah, but he's also your Messiah? So that's probably what they were thinking. And they really didn't know what to make of it. So he comes back to tell everybody that Gentiles are being saved and the Holy Spirit is coming upon them. And so all these supernatural gifts are happening to the Gentiles also. And the first thing that they think of to say is, you mean you ate with a bunch of Gentiles? Not look at all these, that's wonderful. These Gentiles are being saved. It's, you ate with Gentiles? Essentially they're saying, you made yourself unclean. Now, I should say that the law forbids you from eating these foods. And there was a lot of laws that they made upon those laws that weren't necessarily from God. And one of them was that you couldn't eat with Gentiles. But that was still the law of the nation. They still understood that to mean you shouldn't eat with Gentiles. So, with that being said, he comes back and he basically recaps everything that happened in the last chapter. Now, what makes this chapter so amazing is how the response to this actually happens, to the Jews. In the last chapter, I talked a lot about what it must have been like for the Gentiles to be able to accept this wonderful promise. And in this chapter, I feel like it's kind of accepting that Jesus is the Messiah of not just them, but of the whole world. And so it didn't happen all at once, but because of the persecution in Jerusalem, Christianity was spreading all over, and it ended up going to a place called Antioch. Antioch may be the name of a city that you have heard of. It's in modern day Syria. And Antioch at the time was one of the biggest cities in the world. If you Google like what's the most important cities in the Roman Empire, Antioch could be 1, 2, or 3, but it's always at the top of the list. Antioch was a great city. It was an amazing city. And eventually, a Christian church wouldn't be based in Jerusalem. It's going to be based in Antioch. So the fact that Christianity at this point moved to Antioch was very significant, not just for the future, but for the time, because this is the first time that there's a Gentile church being started. So they still don't know what to think of all this. And so Barnabas goes and finds Paul. And, it doesn't say, you would think from reading this that, it was just a couple weeks later. But in reality, Saul was in Tarsus, and he was there for probably about 7 to 10 years. So there's a big time gap in between, these chapters. But the church in Antioch is growing like crazy with, it says the Hellenists. Now, I should state that Hellenists, in previous chapters, we're talking about Greek-speaking Jews, but in this part, it's talking about a Hellenist is really anybody who is a Greek-speaking person. It's not like living in Greece. So what it's saying here is that, the gospel was spreading to the Gentiles, to the Greek-speaking Gentiles. But there was so much of the Holy Spirit coming upon the people in Antioch that eventually there was a prophet, somebody with the gift of prophecy given by the Holy Spirit, came to them and said, there's going to be a famine all over the world. And so they prepared for the famine. And after they prepared for the famine, they found out that the church in Jerusalem, what was now the main church in Jerusalem, that the Christians were hungry and starving there in Jerusalem. So what they did was they took up a collection, and then they brought it back they brought it from Antioch to the church in Jerusalem. Now, this is important. This is actually pretty mind-blowing, because the church in Jerusalem is still thinking, I don't know what to think about all of these Christians. If you were a recent, if you were a Jewish Christian and you don't know what to think about these people, and then they start giving you food, your heart would probably change toward them. So this gives validity to, in the hearts of the Jewish Christians, that these are really brothers of ours. And it was brought to them, the food was brought to them by Barnabas and Saul. I may have said Paul. Paul and Saul, they're the same person. In later chapters, he'll be changing his name. But it's such a neat chapter because, it shows how we are one church. We are, whatever you were before, what's the most important thing now is that we are, we are Christians now. That is what we rally around. So if you meet someone from some other culture and you think, oh, there's such a divide between us, if that person's a Christian, there's no divide between you. You are part of the same culture. So this is a great example of how we should see ourselves first as Christians before anything else. So, all right, well, that is Acts chapter 11. Bye.